What's up, Zombs? Today we are going to examine the game that skyrocketed Resident Evil to stardom.
Wait! Don't shoot!
Get down!
Easter eggs, game secrets, things cut in development, and so many other cool things. This is WB's guide of RE Easter eggs, secrets, and stories from Resident Evil 2.
This is what everyone's been dying for. Resident Evil 2.
Michael Jackson is no stranger to zombies, so it's no surprise he made it into the series. If you take a look at the graffiti on the wall by the basketball court, it says "Blood on the Dance Floor," which was a Michael Jackson album that came out just a year earlier, featuring a song with the same name. In our RE1 video, we talked about the details of Redfield's Made in Heaven mantra, inspired by Queen and Freddie Mercury. Well, in RE2, Claire has the same insignia on the back of her classic pink outfit. Not only that, but when you are exploring the RPD, you can find Chris's Made in Heaven jacket, which was his secret costume in Resident Evil 1. And in Resident Evil 2, we get a second Queen reference, courtesy of Claire. The back of her bonus costume says "Let Me Live," which is also a track on Queen's Made in Heaven album.
My job is to sit and look at paintings.
One of the biggest international sitcoms of the 90s was Mr. Bean, and the show had some hilarious bits featuring Mr. Bean's classic yellow Mini. Well, as you are walking to the RPD in RE, you can see this iconic car, the black hood giving it away that it's a Mr. Bean Easter egg. By the time Resident Evil 2 came out, Street Fighter was already a classic series, and in the latest edition, Street Fighter Alpha 2, there was a new character named SAKURA. The first Easter egg of RE2 is right in the opening scene, where you see a store called Aruka's, which when spelled backwards reads SAKURA. Someone at Capcom was a big Back to the Future fan. Not only did they slide a DeLorean into Raccoon City, they also added a really weird photo into the background. I don't know how it got there, but it's a cast photo from the movie Back to the Future 3.
Great Scott!
Another random background wall asset found later in the game is actually the cover of a real Playboy. We showed you a bunch of censorship in Resident Evil 1, and Resident Evil 2 has its own. As you walk down the hall, you'll find a guy with no head. What happened? Liquor happened. Well, originally, the head was supposed to be dropped from the ceiling by the liquor to scare the player. This was actually censored at the last minute, and because of that, the head remains in the code. If you look closely, you can see the side of it, and if we shift the camera a little, you can see it's right there. One thing they did not censor, and something I didn't even know could happen, is Sherry can actually get taken out by the bugs. You've heard the meme, "Is that a JoJo reference?" Well, this time, yes it is. In 1998, Capcom released an arcade game based on an anime called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and in the RPD, you will find a locker that says JoJo. In RE1 development, Joseph Frost was named after JoJo star from JoJo, and that's because the director of RE2, who was also working on RE1, was a big JoJo fan. At the start of Scenario B, a store called Amagamis is in the background, and if you flip the letters, you get Shimogama, the man behind the design of the liquor. Across town, you can see the name Matsunami, written on a billboard. He was one of the designers that helped create and design the RPD. And while we're talking about the guy who helped design the RPD, we'd love to ask him, where are the bathrooms? For years, there were jokes about the lack of bathrooms in the game, despite it probably making it better. And it became so well known that when the game was remade 21 years later, the new developers constantly mentioned and laughed about the fact that the remake had bathrooms.
In the original Resident Evil 2, there was no bathroom, but we actually added it.
There were a few spelling errors in the game, but none more egregious than the Welcome Leon sign, which was spelled WELLCOME. This was such a noticeable mistake that many years later in the remake they fixed the error, but also made fun of the misspelling as well, as you can find a missing L sitting on a desk.
Just great.
And this isn't really a spelling error, but when you go to the computer at the end of the game, it says 3 men gorilla stance. No idea. The late 90s was when Kobe Bryant was becoming an NBA star, and it looks like the devs used a pic of Kobe dunking as part of the RPD decor. This is not confirmed, but come on, 1998 Lakers, it's gotta be.
Back to Kobe!
This one was one of those impress your friends secrets back in the day. There's a secret fixed camera angle in front of the RPD that randomly appears if you walk towards the gate over and over and over, showing an area that Jill accessed in RE3. The strangest secret by far in the game, and I don't know who discovered it, is the Wesker's desk Easter egg. If you click on the desk 50 times, it will suddenly reveal a canister of film. If you take that film to the darkroom and develop it, you ask yourself, why does Wesker creepily have this picture of Rebecca in his desk? We've talked about the typewriter being one of the many influences from The Shining on Resident Evil, but in the RPD we get a straight up reference. As Leon walks the halls, he can see red rum painted on the wall in blood. This, of course, spoiler alert, spells murder backwards, and is one of the classic parts of The Shining.
Red rum! Woo!
The star's office at the RPD is Resident Evil Fan Gold, as it connects this new edition of the game with RE1. We get to see the desks of Rebecca and her first aid pack, Chris and his secret jacket, Barry and his weapons, Wesker and his creepiness, and Jill with her beret and her boyfriend?
What was all that 1 in a million talk?
Plus, we get to see a photo of the entire STARS team. There's even a little item Easter egg in a box on the floor. It's the gold emblem from the mansion fireplace puzzle. And oh my gosh, someone actually brought back the wooden version too. And if you're wondering how the events of RE1 didn't change the world, Chris's diary is also found here, and it basically tells us that the events of RE1 were not known or believed by most. Also within Chris's diary is a little foreshadowing to a future game, Resident Evil Code Veronica, which was actually supposed to be the sequel to RE2. The diary says Chris went to Europe to chase Umbrella, and that moment in the game is where Claire realizes that if she can escape Raccoon City, she'll have to go to Europe, which ends up being the plot of Code Veronica. When you're talking about RE2, you have to talk about Resident Evil 1.5. This was the development prototype for RE2 before RE2, and featured Leon, whose original name was going to be, wait for it, Grant Bittman. And not Claire, but Elza Walker. This is a complex topic that needs its own video, but basically in the original idea for RE2, you would find some cool stuff, a more modern day police station design, a very interesting training battle coliseum mode, and enemies that were cut from RE2 like the zombie gorillas and everyone's favorite, the man spider. Oh, and by the way, you can find a way to play this, and they even have a newer update in 2022. Resident Evil 2 had some mega unlockable weapons. By beating the different scenarios with different rankings, you could unlock an infinite machine gun, an infinite rocket launcher, and this crazy thing, the Gatling gun. This is also a good place to tell you about two weapons that were cut from the game just before the release, which are the Calico M950 and the H&K MC51 machine gun. Plus, don't forget about the grenades that were cut way back in RE 1.5. In RE3, there's a mechanic where you can combine chemicals to create ammo, and it was going to start in Resident Evil 2, with these two chemicals that could transform grenade rounds into other types of rounds. And two other things cut from the game were spark shot ammo and flamethrower ammo. During the events of Resident Evil 2, Leon never meets Chief Irons. However, if you backtrack a weird way in the game, you can discover the body of Chief Irons with Leon. He doesn't seem to care that there's half a man on the ground.
I'd really like to be alone now.
And Claire never meets Ada or Ben. However, just like the Irons thing, Claire can discover Ben's body. And then at the end of the game, Claire can run into Ada for a quick second.
Who are you?
And I always forget that in Leon B, he actually does run into Sherry as well. There are 4 scenarios in RE2, and while there are some slight changes to story, item locations, and game path, they are very similar. The main difference in all the scenarios are between the characters, with Leon meeting Ada and Ben, and Claire meeting Sherry and Irons. And there are 2 major differences in the scenarios themselves, with the 5 G-Monster boss fights being divided up between A and B, and with Mr. X being added to B. So B gets 2 extra boss fights and is generally harder.
I'm not letting anyone leave my town. Everyone's gonna die.
There is also something called the Zapping System. This is where doing something in Scenario A impacts the game in Scenario B. The most common is the weapons locker room, where if you leave or take the side pack in A, it will be there or gone in B. There are 8 different zaps, and we'll cover most of them in depth throughout this video. You probably remember finding a wire and trying to shut these windows in Scenario A, only to see them pop right back open and the halls flood with zombies anyway in Scenario B. The reason for this is because the cord only works for that current scenario. But there's a secret here that makes all that irrelevant. In Scenario A, don't re-enter the library after the first time, and in B, don't enter the library at all. Then, when you need the final puzzle piece that's in the library, you can enter. It will trigger the windows, but you've already completed the RPD, so you won't have to go in those hallways ever again. Late in Scenario A, you have the option to turn on some BOW poison gas. Sounds like the right move, but it isn't, it's a trick. While the gas may make A easier, when you return in B, the enemies are actually harder and annoyingly poisonous. So only turn the gas on in Scenario B, and you are all set. I'll explain this one in reverse, because I feel like everyone knows the secret of blowing up the croc in Scenario A so that he doesn't appear in Scenario B. Did you know that if you fight him genuinely in Scenario A, he will run away when you defeat him? Then in Scenario B, he will come back and you can do the cheap blow up trick, or you can fight him for real again and really defeat him. In Resident Evil 1, we got Zombie Kenneth and Zombie Wesker. Check out our RE1 video if you don't know about him. And we get 2 more cool character zombies in RE2. First is Zombie Marvin, and you encounter him in the A scenario. Everyone knows that, but what most people don't know is that you actually don't have to kill him. And if you don't, then he'll surprisingly be back in Scenario B for the other player. Remember the helicopter pilot that left everyone behind in RE1? No! Don't go! Well, he's our second zombie, and the only way to unlock him is to walk to the RPD in the beginning of the game without picking up an item, a secret the game reveals when you beat it. In 1998, this was totally random, but a year later when RE3 came out, we actually see that this was an amazingly cool Easter egg secret. You see, the beginning of RE3 is actually a prequel to RE2. So in the storyline, when Nemesis kills Brad on one day in RE3, the next day his zombie is back in RE2. It's just so cool how they made this backward story connection in a PS1 game. Speaking of Brad Zombie, he's there to drop the closet key and let you change costumes. Leon has 2 alternates and they come with a bonus. First is a leather jacket with a skull on it and jeans. Second is a tank top with RPD cap. The bonus? You probably saw it. He will now turn his gun sideways to fire. Something very 90s. Claire only gets 1 costume, but an even cooler bonus. She has a flame leather jacket with cowboy boots, but it comes with a special weapon. The Colt SAA Peacemaker, which is an outlaw's gun that you'd find in the Wild West. But wait, there's more. There was also an N64 version of the game, and in that one, Leon gets a STARS tactical outfit and a side-shooting biker getup that I call the David Duchovny. And Claire gets a weird purple outfit with the logo of the N64 developers on the back. Fun? Speaking of the N64 version and the X-Files, 2 years after RE2 hit PS1, it was ported to the N64. This new version had things like violence control, an item randomizer, and the ability to change the color of the blood. But the real cool part were the X-Files.
The truth is out there.
No. EX as in extra files.
Sure, fine. Whatever.
This one had notes about RE1 and RE2, some exact notes from RE3, references to Code Veronica, and even Resident Evil Outbreak, and a note from the little girl Rebecca about a convict named Billy.
Don't call me little girl.
That didn't mean much at the time, but it's actually an Easter egg that was teasing Resident Evil 0, which was in development. After RE1, it was a joy to not run into any hunters in RE2, and while the hunter doesn't appear as an enemy, if you have the N64 version, you can see a little secret. It's the corpse of a hunter in the labs. A nearby note says that Umbrella has created a new type of hunter called Hunter R, and we actually never see that type of hunter until years later in Resident Evil Outbreak. But that means this specific original RE1 hunter right here was most likely supposed to be one of the last of its kind. It's probably why we don't see hunters as an enemy in RE2, because they are being retooled. To get into that room in any version, you have to enter your fingerprints into a computer in Scenario A, and then again in Scenario B. Your prize is normally a machine gun or ammo for it, but on the N64, you get the Easter egg. By the way, did you know the password is normally guessed? But on the N64 version, the password has become Nemesis.
Stars.
There are a few parts of the game where the developers wanted to make it look like real life, but where they couldn't actually show different brands. That's why you see fake versions of Texaco in the intro, which is called Texago, a fake Burger King called Burger Kong, and a fake Coca-Cola called Choca-Cola, which was way too similar to that Coke that they had to remove it and change that and another vending machine in other versions. Being able to shoot the screen actually started in Resident Evil Director's Cut, but in RE2 there are many more places in the game in which you can shoot the screen and a bullet hole will appear, especially if you use Leon and the shotgun. While Chris Redfield is in Europe, his character does make an appearance in RE2, but only in a special unlockable mode called Extreme Battle Mode, where the player goes through the RPD looking to find 4 bombs. This mode lets you pick Claire, Leon, Ada, or Chris, but the cool part is that Chris gets a brand new character model, my favorite one of all time. And the devs were even detailed enough to make the future boulder puncher strong. When Leon shoots a shotgun, he's kicked back. When Chris shoots the same shotgun, he's strong enough to stand tall. There are also 2 special unlockable Force Survivor game modes, Hunk and Tofu. In each, you try to get your character through a linear path of the RPD to escape. This is where we're first introduced to 2 future fan favorites. Hunk is the Umbrella team leader of these guys, and Tofu, who was actually just a collision box for game testing that was converted into a funny character. On the Tofu title screen, you see he's wearing Jill's beret, and the other Tofu has Leon's bloody bandage. Oh, and when you beat Tofu's game, you see his fate. Hunk eats him. I don't want to name any names, where's Barry? But some people didn't know that Mr. X is actually a tyrant monster.
The ultimate life form.
This cool boss appears only in Scenario B of the game, and each time he appears you can either run or kill him to earn ammo and special weapons. Not only does he have a different storyline depending on the character you choose, But one of the cool things about the game is he will jump scare Leon and Claire in different locations depending on who you play with. So after you think you're going through the scenario again the same way, he'll jump out and scare you. This is also a good point to mention the callback to Resident Evil 1, as when you face Mr. X in his final tyrant-y form, Ada will actually throw the player a rocket launcher.
Here, use this!
In the same way Brad threw out a rocket launcher for Jill in Resident Evil 1.
You're Amazon, Jill!
And the other callback to Resident Evil 1 is the triple camera angle kill of Tyrant, almost exactly the same in both.
Game over.
During the game, Leon meets a new character named Ada.
Ada Wong.
Or at least he would if she would ever wait.
Ada, wait! Ada, wait! Ada, wait! Ada!
But Ada isn't exactly new, because in Resident Evil 1, she and her boyfriend John were both mentioned and used as a password in the game. And now in RE2, they've become legit characters.
I'm trying to find my boyfriend. John's dead.
There are a couple weird things in the intro. First, there's a sign from a real-life Paris park randomly on a wall in Raccoon City. But even weirder, when a zombie attacks Leon, if you slow it down, you can see the zombie is actually just another Leon. Must have been a test phase that just ended up in the game. And what better way to end the video than with the #1 Resident Evil in-game meme of all time. So that's a whole lot of secrets, Easter eggs, and stories from Resident Evil 2. Did you know all of these? Did we miss anything important? Let me know in the comments. And be sure to check out our RE1 video and stay tuned for RE3 coming soon. I'm Where's Barry, and don't forget to like and subscribe!